Welcome to another episode of Awkward Travel Chats. I am Kelly from The Awkward Tourist, and this is my husband Kevin. He works behind the scenes at The Awkward Tourist.
That's right. If you're new to these Awkward Travel Chats, every week we talk about a past trip that we've been on and give some stories, a couple tips if you want to ever do a trip like that. And this week is a especially important one. We're talking about working in Alaska, which is actually where we met.
Yes, we spent a summer in Alaska, and we're going to be talking about that today.
So we went to Alaska in 2013. We both worked up there for a full summer, so it wasn't a traveling holiday. We went for a 5-month contract and worked at a wilderness lodge up there. There's a lot of different seasonal jobs you can get in Alaska, but these are the ones that we both fell into, and then we ended up meeting. We were working at the same restaurant up there, and that's how we met.
Kevin was into seasonal work, so he was doing winters at ski resorts and summers and more summer destinations like Alaska. And I just found out about this world of seasonal work, and I decided, hey, why not go spend a summer in Alaska? So I went up there in May, and
How did you hear about it? Did you just find out like an article online, or?
I just was dissatisfied with what I was doing at the time. And I had been on cruises to Alaska in the past and had talked to tour operators and things about working up there and people working seasonally, and I just decided to Google summer jobs, and I applied to a bunch of them in national parks in Alaska and a bunch of other places, and they emailed me back like the next day and said, you're hired, no interview or anything. So yeah. I was like,
a lot of state park
okay.
jobs seem to do that. They'll just kind of hire everybody. And the place that we actually worked, if you couldn't afford your plane ticket to get up there, they would actually pay for your ticket and take it out of your first couple weeks' wage, which was kind of cool. So if you really want to get up there and work, but you really couldn't afford the travel there, the company would actually take care of it for you. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, if you ever find yourself in need of a job during the summer months, it's a great opportunity. Go to these seasonal places. Go to Alaska, go to national parks, go to places where business is booming in the summer, because I think their job market like triples in the summer.
Oh yeah, that was like Alaska tourism in the summer. The population of people that come in just to work for the summer is huge.
Yes.
So the resort that we worked at was, I think, 300 or 400 people, and very few of them were Alaska natives. Most of them came from California, or I was coming from Colorado, or wherever. So I found the job actually through a friend who worked at Copper Mountain. When I lived in Colorado, I worked at Copper Mountain Ski Resort, and I was really fed up with a bad day of work and just thought to myself, I need to go to Alaska and do something crazy, like work on on the oil pipeline or on deadliest catch fishing boat, and like do that for the summer. And I was telling this to a friend of mine, and he's like, oh, one of my coworkers works in Alaska in the summer, and introduced me to Danny. And he kind of explained a little bit about the resort, and within 2 weeks I had a job and I was heading up there.
Where we worked was at the Princess Cruises Mount McKinley Wilderness Lodge, which Princess is obviously a cruise company, and they do Alaska cruises, but they also do what's called Alaskan Cruise Tours, which are Alaskan cruises, and then part of it is on land, so you get shuttled by bus and train to different parts in Alaska they have a bunch of different lodges up there. So you'll go from lodge to lodge, and it's all organized.
Yeah, I think there's 5 that Princess owns.
Yeah, something like that. But they bus you and you have a schedule and everything like that. So we worked at one of those, and it was 3 hours drive north of Anchorage in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, these lodges, they call them wilderness lodges, and they're not exaggerating. Most of Alaska is wilderness, but these places were out in the middle of nowhere. We're talking an hour drive one way to the closest town.
I don't actually think it's called Mount McKinley Lodge anymore, because it's not called Mount McKinley. When the sun was out and it wasn't cloudy, an epic view of Denali Mountain.
Mm-hmm. That was the whole reason that the resort was built there. It's just because it was I think it was 40 miles south, but on a clear day you could see Mount McKinley. And Mount McKinley, if you don't know, it's the largest
It's the highest mountain in North America.
Highest mountain, that's what I'm going for. So it's 20,000 feet, just a little over 20,000 feet, and it is just insanely massive. So even from 40 miles away, you got a killer view of it if it wasn't cloudy and the skies were clear.
Yes, which is a common thing for Alaska in the summer because it's still the Pacific Northwest. It actually wasn't the Denali Lodge. Like there was another lodge that was Denali
That was
National
closer.
Park.
Mm-hmm.
So where we were was actually Denali State Park, which is different than the national park.
Yeah, and I've been to the Denali one, and there wasn't that crazy of a view of the actual mountain, so we definitely had better view.
But it was incredible.
Yeah,
It's very, very impressive mountain.
A lot of people think of Alaska and they think it's just this really cold place all the time, but in the summertime it gets well up into 90 degrees Fahrenheit. You can walk around in shorts and a t-shirt. It's very, very nice.
It's a wilderness hiker's paradise.
Mm-hmm. And also something that's really cool is because it's so far north, the days are very long. So in peak summer, where our lodge was located, it would get dark at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning and only stay dark for a couple hours and then get light again. Now, on the other side, in the winter, it's dark all the time there. And
it doesn't get light until like 10 a.m. and then it starts getting dark at 3 p.m. or something like that.
And they just close the lodge in the winter. They board it up, it gets covered in snow, and I think they open from May to September. But
Yes.
So we were catering to these cruise ship guests that would come up to get a view of Mount McKinley. So the way that our guest intake would work, they'd come on these big tour buses, stay a couple days, and then take off.
So we would get big waves of people all at once. We worked together in a restaurant. We were both servers at the restaurant. It was called the 2320, which was 20320, which is the height of Mount McKinley or Denali. So we just called it the 2320. It was kind of like a bar and grill type place. It did breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, there were 3 restaurants at the resort. I want to say there was something like 400 guest beds or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, it wasn't too big.
So it wasn't a huge resort. But because it's all the way out in the middle of the wilderness, when you work there, you have to live on the property. There was nobody that could really commute because there just wasn't anywhere nearby to live. So part of working there in your contract was that you would live there. They would provide all your meals for you as well. And you would walk yourself to work every day, walk yourself up the hill to go home.
Yeah, so when I say, like, if you need a job and you're hard up, go to Alaska because they take care of everything. Like, we didn't pay for lodging and food out of our own pockets. It just came out of our paycheck. So we never had to fork over money for that. And it was...
Yeah, it was really reasonable. I think it was $15 a day for 3 meals, and you could go to the employee dining room whenever you wanted. I think it closed. I don't even know if it ever closed. I think you could go in the middle of the night and go get like cereal and toast if you wanted to.
It was terrible food.
Yeah, it wasn't very... After eating it for 5 months, it was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But they included all the food for you. They included your accommodation and like sheets on the bed, TVs on the room, everything's fully furnished. The way that a lot of the setups was you'd have a roommate and then you would share 2 rooms to 1 bathroom. So there'd be 4 people in 1 bathroom, which was a little different.
It's a little like dorm style.
Yeah, it's kind of like dorm living.
I had 1 roommate and we both shared a bathroom, but they were really small rooms.
Yeah, it was definitely very tiny. But it was interesting, you know, you're working with all these people and you're also like living in the same quarters with them, so there's lots of parties and people hanging out and
it was like adult summer camp.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. A lot happened in a short amount of time there. That felt like a long amount of time.
Yeah, there were probably 300 employees or so at this lodge and you couldn't really go anywhere. Most people didn't have cars, which...
I have a story about that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I know, there's so much to explain about it. Most people didn't have cars. Most people came up. They flew from wherever they were. I went up in May. I didn't have a car. The way you could get around was you could take the excursions that the company offered guests, or you could take the buses around. Like there was a bus that went several times a day from the lodge to the nearest town, which was an hour away. which I took all the time just to get off property.
Yeah, and this town that we keep talking about is the town of Talkeetna in Alaska. And like Kelly said, it was about an hour away. You could actually get there by boat in about 20 minutes, but there was no road, so you had to go like a really long way around.
Yeah, and Talkeetna is a super cool town.
Yeah, Talkeetna really is.
It's really small. I think, I don't know about year round, but it had about 800 residents when we were there, so it must be a lot less.
Yeah, my parents used to watch the show Northern Exposure, and that was based in Talkeetna, so if anybody knows that show, that's the place.
It's an old 90s?
I don't know.
Might even be late 80s. I think you're dating yourself there.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but my mom always told me about it. So the town itself is a jumping off point for climbers and mountaineers that are going to try to ascend Mount McKinley. So it's a really interesting mix of people because you get all these high alpine climbers that are in the town, and then you've also got a lot of the tour guests, that come from the cruise ships that'll be there for the day, a bunch of seasonal workers like us, and a bunch of fishermen and just people that live out of the Alaskan bush. It's where the road ends, so it's kind of a meeting point for like a lot of rivers and a lot of trails to come in.
Yeah, they described it as a drinking town with a climbing problem.
Yeah, so it's a really cool small town.
Yeah, it was, mainly open for the summer for tourists, but surprisingly had a ton of amazing restaurants.
Yeah, really good food.
And maybe that's just because we were eating such crappy food at our resort, but so good. So good, the food there.
You could get, fishing is huge, so there's always fresh caught halibut or fresh caught salmon. Crab legs, king crab is coming right from Alaska, so that was a huge thing there too. It was just a really cool town. It was super fun.
Super funky.
Yeah, and lots of boat tours going out of there.
Everything was space available, which I'm totally used to doing at this point. But you could take the cruise tour excursions, which is like, any tours, whatever. If there was space available as an employee, you could do it for free. Hardest tours to get on was a glacier landing, which you took this special plane with skis on the bottom of it, and it flew up right at the base of Denali Mountain and landed on the glacier, and you could go out and walk around. And that was like super hard to get on, and you had to go wait all day.
They're pretty expensive, but if you were smart about it, you could go on these excursions for free working at this lodge, and that was just so awesome. It was really an incredible experience. Stuff that you would normally have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to do.
Oddly, though, a lot of the people that went and did seasonal work there year after year, didn't ever do that. But I was only there for 1 year, and I probably did 7 to 10 different tours just because I figured I was up there. Why not? So I did this glacier landing, and this was before he got up there because he didn't come until August, right?
I think so.
I got there in May. He got there in August.
The full season that the lodge was open was from May to September. I went up in the year 2012 and worked for a full summer, and I was like, I'm not going to come back. It was kind of a crazy work schedule, and it was fun, but it was a lot, and you definitely get stir crazy kind of being in the wilderness this long. So I decided that I wasn't going to come back, but they have this thing called the Princess Hangover, where once you leave, you forget how bad the job was, and then you want to go back and do it again. So I ended up going back for a second year, but only for half a year, or half a season. And that's when I met Kelly up there.
At our restaurant, it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there were 3 different shifts. You could work breakfast and half of lunch, or you could work half of lunch and dinner, or you could work a split shift, which meant breakfast
and dinner.
With a break in the middle, and then dinner.
And most of your shifts ended up being those split shifts, which were really tough because the restaurant opened at 6 a.m. in the morning, and it closed at 10 o'clock at night. So a typical day working at this restaurant was you would wake up at 5:30 or 6, go down, work breakfast.
Yeah, until
11 or something. Go eat some lunch.
Take a nap.
Go up to your room up the hill, which was a short walk. I think it was less than a quarter mile up the hill to where we all lived. Take a nap, come back at 4:30 and work the whole dinner shift. Get off at 11 o'clock, and then
go to the employee bar.
And then do the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, so it was really tough. And you did that 6 days a week was your,
Yeah.
unless you specifically requested for whatever reason, they would schedule you 6 days a week.
Yeah, you can make a ton of money doing it. It was great for that. For sanity, it was a little tough.
Yeah, it was like, I keep going back to this. If you really need a job, go, not now because of COVID, but in the future, you can make a ton of money and you're not paying out of your own pocket for
Yep.
rent and food, so you can save it all pretty
One,
much.
one huge benefit of working in Alaska as well, at this lodge that we worked at, there was nowhere to spend your money. Like we just said, there was an employee bar that you could go to, but you really couldn't spend that much there, like with the amount of money you were making from tips and things like that. So you could save a ton of money. One struggle of it, however, is the closest bank was like 2.5 or 3 hours away. So you're like hiding all this cash that you're getting and saving up for the whole summer for the one trip that you get to go to the bank and like deposit it all. So you had to get super creative about where you're putting your money that you got.
I got lucky because my roommate had a car and she would go down to Anchorage like frequently, once a week or something. And I trusted her enough to give her all my cash to deposit for me, which is, yeah, so there were unique challenges living there. It was very isolated.
Going on the car thing that Kelly was just talking about, I went the first season and was like, I don't need a car, I'll be totally fine. And about halfway through the season, I was like, can't take this anymore. Definitely have to get a vehicle. So I bought a little junker for $400, $500, I think it was, and drove that around. I don't even think I got it registered, which looking back on probably wasn't a good idea, but it was
We were in our 20s.
It was a great car that we lasted for a little bit, and I gave it to a friend when we left or whatever. So the second season when I came up, when I met Kelly, I knew that working in the middle of the wilderness in Alaska, you had to have a car for your own sanity. So I arranged to have a car brought to the airport and met me. So I found somebody on Craigslist. They were selling an 86 Ford Bronco for like $800. And I was like, I'll give you the $800 if you come and pick me up from the airport. So I literally was met at the airport by this person, did a test drive in the car, and like gave me the title, and that was my car for the next couple months while I was up there.
It was a piece of junk.
It was a super big piece of junk, but it was a great car to have because it would go anywhere in Alaska. And when you work at a place that not many people have cars, everyone asks to borrow your car, and I think it got like 8 miles to the gallon or something like that. So it was terrible gas mileage. So I would always tell people, yeah, you can borrow the car, but you have to return it with a full tank of gas, and that cost like $90 or something at the time. So,
Yeah,
it deterred everyone from asking for my car.
But we took it all over the place.
We did. That was great. Yeah, it was super fun.
I liked him because he had a car.
Yep. Hey, I knew what I was doing.
I was already pretty much over being there by the time we met, because he came in August, and I had been seeing someone for the first half of the season, and it didn't end well. So I was pretty much ready to go back to California. And
I showed up kind of not with the mentality of wanting to work for the summer, but just to be able to explore a little bit and see some things that I hadn't seen in the previous year. So my main focus getting into Alaska on the second year was just, I want to travel around, I want to see the northern lights, I want to do all this different stuff. So that's kind of how we first bonded, because I was always looking for people to go and do these adventures, and Kelly was always down with those. So
our coworkers conspired behind our back to matchmake for us, which is kind of funny. The first time we ever hung out was we took his car off-road.
Yeah.
Would you say off-roading? I mean, it was a 4x4. So.
Yeah, we went on a beer run, I think, which was like a 2-hour ordeal in Alaska.
Yeah, it was like a journey.
Yeah, and we just drove and did some off-roading, and it was
explored around.
It was great. You could really go wherever you want in Alaska, and just kind of camp or explore or hike. There's a ton of things to do.
Yeah, don't wait to go to Alaska until you're like of the cruising age. A lot of the people that came on the cruise ships were retired, and people wait to go to Alaska until they're retired because it's a dream retirement trip. But there's so much to do that's physically active in Alaska, the hiking and kayaking and off-roading and stuff like that. I feel like it would be difficult to do when you're in your 60s or 70s.
Did a bunch of hiking and a bunch of traveling to hot springs and different things like that. We saw the Northern Lights, which was incredible. there was kind of a group text message that would go around with all of the employees that like, hey, if you saw the Northern Lights, you had to go and text everybody else and wake everybody up.
Yeah, it was your duty as a human being to tell everybody.
Yep. So, because everyone would get up and just go see them, and so that happened one night. And if you've never seen the Northern Lights, they start really, really interesting. They are kind of just like wispy clouds. There's no color, but it's white, and you kind of see this like white weird cloud in the sky, and that's your indication that like, oh, these solar flares might be happening. So one night that happened, I was up pretty late, and I was looking outside and saw that, and so ran to some other people, told them, and I, before I knew it, we were like in the car, called everyone we knew, and we were all heading down to this viewpoint that was maybe like 5 minutes down the road from the lodge that we worked.
That time I was asleep, and because I had one of those early 6 a.m. Shifts the next day, and he calls me. There had been
probably like 2 in the morning.
Yeah, there had been whispers of the lights the nights before that, so everyone was kind of on high alert. And I told him, I was like, I have an early shift, but if you see them, call me. And he called me and he woke me up, and I almost thought for just a second, like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, and she was kind of like, really, right now? And I'm like, hey, the Northern Lights are out. You told me to call you if I saw them, so that's what I'm doing. And she's like, all right, come and get me in 5 minutes.
Woke my roommate up, and she took her car and got a bunch of people in her car, and It was just like all of the employees went down to this viewpoint.
Yeah, and it was super incredible. Yeah. I mean, you saw these like streams of green that came. It was a clear night, and you could see all the way to Mount McKinley.
It was over the mountain.
And it went like over the mountain, 40 miles away, just kind of dancing up, and then there was like
blue and
green, and then there was purple and a little bit of gold, and it was just an insane experience that I, definitely won't ever forget. That was a highlight of working up there, and it made all the crappy work schedules and all the BS of what we did with the job kind of worth it.
The 2 hours of sleep that I got for my shift the next day, worth it.
Yeah,
That was really, really cool. And it was only like, that was early September, I think. And that was pretty unusual for that area to see them that early. And you're still pretty far south in Alaska there, so it's not like, it wasn't guaranteed that we would see them. Because he didn't see them in his first year there.
No, went a whole 5 months and didn't see him once.
So yeah, if you want to guarantee that you'll see them in Alaska, you have to go in like January, and you have to go pretty far north. So we got really, really lucky. We were both pretty much down for doing anything because we were in Alaska, especially me. Like, I had no plans to come back or do anything like that again.
Come back to Alaska.
Another
season.
So I wanted to do everything. I didn't want to give up free tours and, seeing all these incredible places. Like, what was I going to do? Take a nap? I'd rather explore Alaska. So we kind of bonded over both being like, hey, want to do this? And the other one being like, yeah, let's go. So we did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, we went on a crazy whale watching tour down in Seward and saw orcas and saw glaciers that were breaking ice off into the water, calving glaciers.
Yeah, that was, I guess, still just southern part of Alaska, down south of Anchorage, and keep kind of driving along the coast, and it's where Kenai Fjords National Park is. And we took this boat tour out to a sea glacier that ends right at the ocean, and it dropped ice and calved into the water, and it made this huge gunshot noise. It's so crazy. And we saw seals and orcas and puffins and sea otters and all kinds of...
Yeah, it was a really, really amazing tour. And just, the whole summer was really cool. You could definitely work too much, and it was pretty stressful, to just stay on that property. But if you got out and used the whole summer as just a home base, and you could travel around, and it was really an amazing time.
We've even thought if we ever really, really needed to, we could pack up everything and buy an old RV, and because you could, there were people who brought their campers or camper vans or RVs, and you could park them on property and hook up and live out of there instead of living in the employee housing. I don't know if it probably cost a little bit of money. It was probably cheaper than the employee housing.
Yeah, there was all sorts of different ways that you could do it. And we worked as servers in a restaurant, but this place had all these different jobs. They had full-time bus drivers that would transport the guests to and from. They had mechanics that worked on all the buses. They had all areas of hotel staff. So they had porters and housekeepers and like front desk attendants, you know, to check people in. They had
tour guides,
nature walks,
reservations,
security guards. There was even an employee bar, and one of the employees' jobs was just to run the employee bar. And that's what he did the whole time.
He was the best paid employee on the property.
Yeah.
Because the drinks were fairly inexpensive for the employees. So we would just be like, yeah, sure, 50% tip. Right.
Yep. Shout out to Peter. If you're watching this, you're the man.
Thanks for making me all those Bay Breezes. But there were all kinds of employee events and stuff too. Like we had a Halloween. So everyone would like make their own costumes. There would be costume contests, and we had prom.
Yeah, it was just like adult summer camp.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there we would go have bonfires, and we'd all hang out, and there, you know, somebody would have a day off, and they'd go fishing, and then they'd come back and they'd grill up like huge pieces of fresh caught salmon, you know, and if you gave them a couple beers, they'd let you eat as much as you want, and it was just a really awesome summer. I definitely recommend it, especially if you're in transition and don't really know what you're doing, because the contract's only 5 months. There's no way that you can work longer than that. You can stay in Alaska and get another job, obviously, but if you don't know what you're doing for a summer, like, it's a great way to spend a summer, make a little bit of money, explore somewhere new, meet some new people.
Yeah, there were people who just worked all summer and then got laid off come September, and then they would just live off of that money and unemployment money until the next May when they would go up again.
They also had this incentive that if you worked 2 consecutive summers
and finished your contract, meaning you didn't get
fired or quit or whatever, you could go on any cruise that Princess offered for like $10 a day or something like that.
I think it was free, but you just had to pay the taxes and fees, which could end up, depending on the cruise, be a few $100s, which... But it was space available, so that was the thing.
Yeah, it was.
So you could like put your request in for these cruises and maybe not know if you got on it until like a week before. And they'd be like, hey, yeah, can you go on this cruise in a week? So it was a little...
If your lifestyle affords that, though, if you're doing seasonal work and, you know, you can do that. I knew somebody that worked up there who did the round the world cruise that they offer, and it was like 190 days. And I think the whole thing cost the person like $4,000 or something like that to do.
Yeah.
It was super cheap.
Room and board included.
Yeah, I think that was for 2 people too. Like, it was just insane. So like, you could do it really well and just use the perks.
Man, we could talk about this for hours about what we did. I mean, we went to Anchorage a few times, which is a really interesting city. Good food. We found the best food. We went to Fairbanks, which was a 5-hour drive one way, and we just went there for the night because there were some hot springs.
Yep. Went up to Denali a bunch, kind of explored there, saw a bunch of moose and bears.
Yeah, lots of wildlife.
I went and explored some abandoned mines after the season. We did some ice climbing. Like, there was just glacier landings.
Yeah. I was always in Talkeetna trying to get off property because it was easy to get there, which is a very cool town, like we said. Cool, amazing scenery, beautiful place.
Yeah, I'm dying to go back. I would love to get back there.
Yes. Yeah, we want to go. Rental cars are kind of expensive though, so
yeah,
that's been a little bit of an issue. But anyway, so I think that's going to be the end of our talk today, guys. We could keep going forever. If you're watching this on YouTube and you made it all the way through that video, thank you so much. Hopefully that gives a little bit of history about where we started as a couple.
That's right.
And if you liked it, we would very much appreciate if you hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, what the heck are you waiting for? If you made it through all this video, you might like us, right? So go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know every time we post. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. This is Kelly and Kevin from The Awkward Tourist.